So Leland, one of the things that our Terps are always dying to know is what's your favorite interview question?
So I'm going to give away the goods here. My favorite interview question, which you'll never hear from anyone else unless they've seen this video, is what is the misperception of you? And I think that what that does is that shows a person's awareness of themselves, and then it also gets them, well, follow up is what are you doing about it, all that sort of thing. But every single person I asked that question, I was like, wow. They kind of lean back and say, I haven't heard that one before. So
what a great one. But I think about, I've heard, tell me about your development, tell me about your greatness, but tell me about the biggest misperception. That's got to be a great curveball.
That's the one. That's the one. It makes people think, and you really see kind of the essence of a person right there. You can't BS that question.
Well, thank you for sharing that with our Terps. Now, you all heard it. You heard it here.
If you hear it, you know where it came from.
How about a Go Terps?
Go Terps!
Thank you, sir. So, Rob, our students love to know favorite interview questions. What's one or two of your favorite questions?
I have a whole myriad of questions after taking your human resources class, but I would say one of my top questions is I basically ask the candidate from their most current job that they're in. Normally, because I usually interview people that are currently employed, and I'll say, take all the activities that you do in a week, month or so, stuff you do on a recurring basis, rank them in your mind, and then tell me the top 3 and why, and then the bottom 3 and why. And that really helps kind of polarize what they like doing, what they don't like doing. And the other thing that works really well about it is it's, well, you want to use 3 because whenever you ask for a list more than 3, it creates anxiety.
Really?
So there's studies where if you ever say like, what are the 5 things you love about your spouse, or like 10 things you love about your spouse, have people try to do that. It's hard to get to a long list like that, and creates anxiety.
And I hope if you ask Diana 5 things that you love about her, you can rattle those right off.
she probably would go with 3 for me. So, but the reality is like it's a great way to kind of figure out what do they really like doing, because the reality is that you have activities you need someone to do in their job, and if they can't kind of cogently answer that, or they kind of not answer the question, that's also a sign.
So if I say one of the things I don't like is all that paper pushing, that pen pushing, then that tells you maybe the attention to detail, that paperwork, that efficiency may not be right for them.
Sure, I did a phone screen once. I remember it was for an analyst role that was supporting sales, so it was giving pricings to sales, and the person was an actuary. And I said to the person, I said, well, what do you, I'm like, you know about the job? They're like, yep. And I said, well, what are the top 3 things you dislike about your job? And they said, answering salespeople. And I was like, okay, well, you do realize this job requires answering salespeople, so clearly they hadn't read the job description well. So,
guys, we've talked about questions you'd love to get from students. What's one of your favorite interview questions? And let's take out like the case kind of question, but what's one of your favorite interview questions and why?
Yeah, I mean, a favorite of mine is I really like to hear how people set a vision and drive people to achieve something. And so, one of my favorites is just tell me about a time where you led a group of people or a team to, you set the vision, you led the team, and you ultimately, what results resulted in what you led.
So not surprised, given your true strong need for achievement and having impact, that's a great question. Bill, what about you?
My go-to question is, tell me something that you're most proud of. And a lot of times people put it in business context, which is great, but sometimes people also talk about a personal accomplishment, which also speaks a lot and brings that quality of what motivates them. Are they achievement-based? Are they a creative thinker type of solution? I think that's a pretty insightful question to kind of get to sort of what's motivating them, and then how they, what they're most proud of.
So guys, for the holidays, one of our gifts back to our Terp Talk readers and our viewers is we've been sharing what interviewers say are their best kept secrets in terms of questions. I'd like to flip it around and ask you, what are some of the hardest questions that you've been exposed to? Andre?
Yes, well, I wasn't asked this one in particular, but KK got it in an interview with Amazon. He was asked, what would you do if Jeff Bezos gave you $100 million? So obviously the company wants you to know what strategy are they attacking, what are the go-tos that they are looking for right now. So you obviously want an answer that, okay, I'm going to use this $100 million to do this action that will solve this problem, or that will be use facing this strategy. So you want to make sure you know the company overall. It will allow you to answer this question properly.
Yes, that's a great situational interview question, setting it up, so you want to definitely tie it back to that. The other thing is that there have been some recent surveys out. PwC did its 2015 surveys of CEOs around the world. Over 1,000 CEOs responded. And one of the biggest attributes, they said, most important for CEOs of the future was curiosity, strategic thinking, thinking ahead, it's a disruptive world. So that kind of question really would be able to help a recruiter tap those kind of competencies. Bill?
The hardest one I got was actually a few weeks ago, was what are some industry trends that you've noticed, or just trends that you've noticed in general? I think all of the second years know that the correct answer to that is China. Thank you to Charlie Olson's class. But for me, that was a very hard question because it was so broad. It didn't necessarily have to deal with that company, but it was, how are you keeping it up with world events? Do you know what's happening? Can you connect the dots? And from that, the company, they then followed up by asking, all right, well, how does that affect our firm? So, it's taking that global perspective and then being able to connect it to that firm, and being able to explain your thought process to them. So it is really tough. It just took me by surprise.
So giving that shout out to Charlie, what I know from Professor Olson too is he really encourages students to read the Washington Post, to stay up with the Wall Street, right, the Wall Street Journal.
And that helped.
Yeah, stay in touch, stay in touch. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I think the hardest question I've ever had is actually one that, on the face of it, seems really simple. It's just a question of why should we hire you? And I think that's pretty easy to answer, for most MBA candidates. If they only really wanted two sentences, right? If you were going to say, you should hire me because X and Y, it would be really simple. But the point at which it becomes difficult is when someone, asks for more. Can you dive deeper? Why should we hire you? Why do you say that is a valuable trait for our organization? And really trying to poke holes in what you're telling them. And so just being confident is just so important in an interview because you don't know, what question you're going to get, and you don't know if they're going to ask more follow-on questions. And the one thing you really don't want to be is at a loss for words. So just make sure you go in there confident and you ask good questions. Asking good questions is just so important.
Yeah, I love that. What I love is, why should I hire you? Favorite interview question for some folks, because I'm getting you to sell me your value proposition. But Chris, what I loved about what you just said is when they're pushing back like that, they're also getting to see your resilience, how tough you are. Do you have the courage to step back and dig in and stay with it, right? So a whole nother set of competencies. Guys, thanks so much for sharing your questions. Can we get a Go Terps or a
Vamos
Terps?